Hi guys, since you have seen the previous video of part 1 where we discussed about what we will be developing, so at first we'll be developing the web server. So okay, let's go ahead. So for that, open the Visual Studio, create a new project. So we'll be choosing ASP.NET Core application, not the .NET framework. So in core application, choose ASP.NET Core web application. Click on next. Just give a name. So pharmacy. Let's not say pharmacy. Let's say management system. Okay. YT. That means for YouTube upload. Just you can name anything. Okay, so I'll be building a management system. So just give a name. What is this thing? Okay, ASP.NET Core application is in C# for Linux, Mac OS, Windows, Cloud Service, Web, anything, everything. Now it's for everything. Just hit and create. So it will definitely take a little bit time, but it was quick. Okay, so it will be my API .NET Core. You can choose the version. For now I'll just leave it as it is. I'm not doing anything. I'll just say okay, I'll be creating an API. Great. Okay, so my project has been created. So this have default controller, and if we go in here, check here, we do have values controller. No, so for now we don't need this thing, just delete it. Okay, so, and like controller, it will be MVC pattern, model view and controller. For building an API, we actually don't use view, because it's just the API that is like you are calling a URL from maybe any website, or not a website, let's say from any web application or mobile application or even console application. You can just call give a API endpoint that is like a URL, and then you will get response. So whenever you request for something via API endpoint, which is a link, it will return the result. So that is the role of web server. So okay, so now we'll have controller which will expose the endpoints. So basically controller is like someone. We are building web server, and the controller will act as a let's say initial point where every request is passed. Controller is where the first request goes to the controller, and then in controller it decides okay what needs to be done, and then there will be a lot of logics, and then it's gonna call logic, and their request is gonna be processed, and then it's gonna pass the response, and this will return the response to the web browser or to the mobile application from where the request is being made. Okay, so definitely we'll have controllers, and then we'll have models. So add a folder called models. Oh, did I add inside? Damn. Okay, just move it to outside. We need outside, so we have models, controllers, and models is basically data models. It's like what kind of data you will be storing. Let's say user, so user is a model because that is something which is going to be identical to table in the database. Suppose if you have user table, you will have a user model. If you have student table, you'll have a student model. If you have course table, you have course model. And if, let's say, student table, for example, student table have student ID, student name, age, gender, right, something like that. And then similarly in model, there will be a class called student with the student ID with the properties like student ID, name, roll number, gender, so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll create a model called user. Let's create a class, choose a class, give the name user, add. Okay, so we have a class called user. So for user class, we'll have property called user ID, and we'll have username. Okay, let's start with capital. So this is how it's in .NET. So username, and let's give password. So password going to be string and password, right? Okay, so let's separate, looks clear, clean. If you want to add comments, you can add comments. For now, I'm not adding anything, I just want to complete it as soon as possible. I just don't want to take more time. Okay, so we have a user class. Let's add a controller. Okay, add a controller. So let's say you can add not these three, you can add any three of these. If you want to use entity framework, you can use it. For now, we are not using anything. We are just storing data in a memory. Memory has like in a memory, that means in the RAM. When the service is started, we can store every data in the RAM. So like we'll create a list of user, and then we'll populate the list. So you can do either API controller, it's empty, or API controller with read-write actions. Let's do this because it's easy, So just give the name of the controller. So it's going to be user controller. Come on, it's taking a lot of time. Okay, I'll just pause the video for a while. Okay, so we have a controller with the request called http get request. So we have two get requests. One is empty without any parameters, and one is with ID. Let's say if we call like API/user, it's gonna go here directly and return the value. But if we say API/user/ if we give an ID, it will return user with the ID. For now, it's a dummy data. Just ignore this, Okay. Similarly, we have post request. Post is for posting the data. That is like you are sending data from the UI, and then you want this data to be inserted in the database, right? So this kind of operation we use post. Similarly, put operation, we usually use it for edit. For now, we're not gonna edit anything. Let's keep it simple and easy for now. And then we have delete. Definitely we want to delete some data, right, with the ID, because we don't want to call just delete without ID so that it deletes the entire record in the table, right? You don't want to implement such kind of logic, right? Okay, so let's say, okay, you need to change the controller name here. So you have to add user, right? So when you call API/localhost/API/user, it's gonna come directly to this controller, and then based on the request type, it's gonna send your request to either get type. If it is the post type, it's gonna send it here. If it is get with /id like /5, then it's gonna give redirect to here, and then it's gonna do the operations, right? Okay, so let's implement. Let's say user 1, user 2. Let's try. Let's see what happens. Okay, I'll just run the service, and for this I'm gonna use Postman. That's the old version of Postman. Damn. Okay, is it old version or the newer version? I'm a bit confused. Let me just check. Okay, so this one is the older ones. Okay, this one is the new one. Okay, definitely. Okay, so now we have localhost. The server is already running, right? So server is already running, and let's imagine you have deployed your application like web server, and now you are like developing UI, right? Your UI team, let's say designer, the front-end developers are responsible for developing an UI for maybe web or mobile application. Now if it is web, what they're gonna do is like, okay, they're gonna call this link, right? API/user, and what they're gonna, so as soon as they call that link, what happens is like the request will come here directly to controller, and then since it's a get request, it will come directly to this part, right? You can see the breakpoint here, right? So, and then what happens, it returns user 1 and user 2. See, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, you can see that in browser. Okay, so how about from the Postman? Let's see. Okay, because why do I use Postman is because you can specify a lot of request types. Suppose it's a get request, right? So you can just insert, oh sorry, what happened? Let me check. I think it's a port number 44301. 44301. Okay, port number is mistaken. See, user 1 and user 2. Okay, so what happens if I change the request post? We usually do this for posting the data, right? So let's see, let me hit the breakpoint there. Definitely I'm not gonna get anything because I have no body, right? Because what it says is like unexpected character encounter while parsing. Wow, what happened? Okay, just leave it. So for body, what happens is like, that's a lot of body. So what I can do is give a body value as value, send, still API/user. I don't know, something is mistake here. Okay, anyway, we'll check later on when we actually implement something. Let's check for delete then. Delete user slash, if I want to delete user with user ID 5, definitely see I'm getting user ID 5. That's how it's gonna be. Now let's implement the actual user model first. Okay, so go to the model, you have user. Okay, that's nice. Controller, user controller. So I have everything almost already ready, so I'll just copy paste because I don't want to waste a lot of time, you know. So I'm gonna go to user controller. I'm just gonna copy everything. Okay, copy, paste. Okay, I'm getting a lot of errors. User, why? Okay, yeah, I need to import this actually. Come on. Models.users. Okay, let me just okay. How about using why is it not showing up? models models dot wow. Okay, so what I should do is management system dot okay models. This way I don't have to specify models to the users. Okay, let's comment this thing for now. Okay, and now we have to implement service because I actually copied paste this thing, and then there is a service class already implemented. So let's implement service. What service does is service is something that has business logic, you know. Come on, why would I always delete? Sorry, just forget to delete this folder, get a new folder outside. Wow. Add a new folder, service. So services, let's say add we're gonna add service class. For service class, let's add a interface first. Wow, I forgot to keep the name. Okay, so it's gonna be user service, right? Let's copy the same name. I forgot to give the name, but you can just give the name while choosing the interface. Okay, so for implementing user interface, so you just have to define what are the functions you want to implement in user service, right? So I'm gonna have a function which will give like list of all the users. So there will be a function which will return list of all the users, right? So let's say that get all users, right? Okay, similarly there will be a function where we can get a user by user ID, so it will return me a user model. Get user by ID, right? So to get the user by ID we need user ID, right? So which is of type integer. Similarly we want to add a user, add user, right? So for adding a user we expect data of type user, and then we want to delete the user as well, user, so it will be returning user model. Actually it's not mandatory, you can return boolean type like true or false, but I just prefer user, but it's up to you, whatever you want to do. Delete user. So for deleting user, definitely I need the ID of a user, right? Okay, so now we have interface. Just remember one thing, interface has to be public, right, every time. So here we have get all users function which will be returning list of users. Similarly get user by ID which will be returning the user model, right? And then add user will expect data of type user, and then after adding user we'll be returning the user object for now. But if you want to return like integer, saying like if you return 1 that means it's been added, 0 that means it's not being added, or true that represents it's being added, or false that means it's not being added. Anything, it's up to you, it's your choice. Alright, so let's implement user service now. Okay, so here's the class. Now for user service you want to implement the class, not the interface, right? User service. Okay, add. And now this user service will implement interface called iUserService, right? See, now I'm getting error, it wants me to implement everything, right? Come on, implement interface. Okay, so it actually implemented all the interface. Now now we have everything ready. Do we? No, this is just a skeleton, right? Now we want to write actual code. So it's already 23 minutes, looks like it's gonna be too long. I'll rather copy paste all the codes which I have already written. So I'll just go here, user service, and I'll just expand. It's better that way, I guess, right? And then if you have any questions you can just comment, I'll reach to you and I will definitely try to solve all the queries you have. So let me explain everything here. Okay, so what we did here is like we created a list of users, not created, actually initialize the list of user. So we want to initialize the list of users, so it's like, let's say holds user data, right? So this will hold definitely list of users, and then we have initialized that thing in the user service controller class, because this is the one that will be called as soon as this class is being initialized at the first, right? So what I did is like Let's say this is our database for now. It's a temporary database. We'll implement database later on the later phases, right? So now we are trying to initialize database with, let's say it's a table called users. We're trying to initialize a user table with few dummy data, right? So I have a user with user ID 1, username Abby, password 123, right? If you go to model, if you see user, because we have user ID, username and password, right? So these are the things that needs to be initialized. Okay, so if we go to user service, so this is how we have initialized to users. So now our database has two data, that two users data. Now for adding a user, what we're gonna do is like whatever we get, that user object, we check if it is null or not. If it is not null, then we're gonna add to our database and then return the user, because we are returning user object just to verify that our user has been added, right? Or else just return null. If we're gonna check in the front end or in our UI, if whatever response we're getting, if it is null, that means the user has not been added, there is some issue. But if we get user object, that means we just say user ID has been added. We're gonna throw like display message like user.user ID has been added in a pop-up. So this is why I'm just returning users, because user object, because I have no idea how front-end developer wants, what front-end developer wants. They might want to display username with user ID this, username this has been added, or something like that. So it's up to them. I'm giving you data, you just do whatever you want. So similarly delete users, I'm gonna get, I don't have this thing in my interface. So for delete users, what happens is like I'm gonna get ID. That means delete the user with this ID, and I'm gonna check user ID. If it is not 0, that means I'm gonna check if the user with that user ID exists in my database. How I'm gonna do that? By implementing extra function called get user by ID. It was not an interface I created by myself for this class, so I can put it as private, because this is something that shouldn't be called. Oh, you kidding me? Why I'm getting this thing? Okay, no, it's already there. Get user by ID. Oh yeah, it's already there, so there's no pointer. So actually I already implemented so in the interface, so definitely it has to be there, right? So I'm gonna check if user exists with that ID. If the user is not null, then I'm gonna remove the user and return the user object, which has already been initialized from this function, because it checks if the user with user ID is equal to this ID. If yes, it returns the user, and this return user is stored in this variable, right? And then this variable, we're gonna return the same variable. Similarly, we have get all users, where we're gonna check if in our database the user count is greater than 0. That means we have data, right? If we have data, we're gonna return the list of users. Like this is the table which holds user records, right? Or else we're gonna return null. Similarly, get user by ID is the same thing. We're gonna get ID. Based on that ID, we're gonna return the user, right? Okay. And if you go to controller class, now you can see it looks like everything. Okay, I'm getting some errors because I need a service class, right? Because this is just a template. Okay, so this is just a template, because see, as soon as user wants the list of users, it comes here, request comes here, and what we're gonna do is, like, from the service class we're gonna call get all users in the service class. And if you go to service class, get all users, what it does, it returns the list of users, right? This is how we're gonna work. Okay, similarly, if you want to get the user by user ID, like user/5, user with user ID 5, then it's gonna call get user by ID function in the service class, and as I showed before, it will return you user detail of user with user ID. Similarly, add users, same thing, you're gonna call add user function. For delete, you're gonna call delete user function with few null checkings, which is definitely mandatory, or else your program gonna throw exceptions. Similarly, there is one thing you need to do. You need to initialize the service class. Similarly, so I have created the variable of iUser service, and I have initialized in the user controller, and this thing is initialized using dependency injection, so what I'm doing is, like, whenever if I see anywhere if I see iUser service, I need to initialize that variable with user service, right? So for that thing, .NET have built-in dependency injection, where if you go to startup class, you can see I have added, oh no, I haven't added. So what I can do is, okay, I'll just explain what happens, okay, let me just take a breakpoint, then run the server. See what I'm getting: an unhandled exception occur while processing the request. Unable to resolve service of type iUser service while attempting to activate this controller, right? So as soon as I enter here, it will directly come to the controller, but before, like, initializing the controller, it goes to its constructor, and in constructor it can see, okay, I have to initialize this variable, but where did I initialize from? Because I'm coming from user interface, or maybe mobile application, somebody requested the API. It is nowhere where this has been initialized or this class has been initialized. Before we can do that because we didn't have had any constructor with this parameter, right? But now we have this parameter which needs to be initialized. We have to do it. So there's a functionality called dependency injection which is built in. So what it does is, like, whenever it sees interfaces, we can automatically initialize or inject the type of object here. Like, suppose, okay, I'm seeing iUser service type, that means I have to have object of type user service, right? Because this has to be type of this. So what I can do is, like, I can go to startup class, and then here in the configure service, what I can do is services dot add singleton So if you see here, sorry, you can see something where, okay, so here is it. What does it say? This is the service and this is the implementation, right? So what I'm gonna do is, like, whenever if I see user, sorry, come on, whenever if I see okay, let me import using management dot services. Okay, so every time if I see user service, initialize it with user service, right? Sorry, I forgot to. Okay, so this is what we have to do here. Now let me try again. Let's run this one. Let me try with the postman. It's the same thing. Or let me just show you from here first. See, now it's hitting the endpoint, because why? It's being initialized. See, this thing has been initialized. Oh wow. Okay, see, we have data as well. So if you see, we're getting data, right? Okay, so a user with user ID 1, user ID 2. Let me do this thing in postman, it will be much better. So let me see, get request, or pass the get request, user ID 1, user ID 2. I want to post the data to the user, and if you go to post user, it expects user, so I'm going to go to body, add, create a JSON object of user, because in our user we have user ID, let's say 3, username, Paul, password 123, right? Let me add a breakpoint. So let's imagine you are requesting sending the data from your web application or iPhone. You are just inserting this data in a form, and then you add, okay, add users, and then what happens? Something wrong happened, Okay, why? What happened? Let me just check. Okay, let me check if 44301, it's a post type. Okay, post type, user ID, username, password, it's correct. It's not giving me any error. User, yes, user. Wow, there's some mistake. Okay, I'm sorry, I just realized. So you're giving the post type, but if you see the route, we have the name add, right? So I have added a route. That means I have to put here /add as well, So when I do send, see, now it's heading here. If you see, we got our data. If we continue, it is returning me the same data, because it is returning the user, right? And if we again go and make a get request, so that means get all users. Now in our database we have 3 data, right? Well, now what if I want to delete the user with data, let's say 1? I have to make a delete request. So what it does, it will come here, right? Send, see, 1. Okay, I'll just give you proper walkthrough. id equals to 0, no, right? So it has to go to delete user function. Okay, so delete user function, it came here, id equals to 0, no, definitely. Now it is going to get user by id. It's going to check if they actually have user with user id. Do we have a database? Yes, definitely. So it's going inside, and it is returning me that user, right? See, it is returning me user with user id 1, whose password is 123, username is avi, and then what I'm gonna do is remove from the list, right? If you check the user now, see, I have John and Paul, but no avi, right? And let's continue. So I'm getting the response back because I'm returning the user object, right? So if I go and get all users again, see, I'm getting user with user id 2 and user id 3, that's Paul. So this is how we implement our first task. This is initial, so it took pretty long time, around more than 40 minutes, but it's basically everything that you need to set up. And this is all the part of just the user part in the web server. We haven't implemented our database, right? Like we didn't add any codes like insert into database, insert into table values, this is this, blah blah blah. We didn't do anything, but we have everything ready, right? If somebody wants to make a login form or registration form with user id, username and password, they can do it instantly because we have our API ready where we can add users, right? And then admin can see the list of users by calling get all users, right? Isn't that interesting? So this is the first step. We'll be developing more in the coming days, so just hold on. If you have any questions regarding these things, let me know. Just add in the comments, I'll reply you. Yeah, thank you for watching, and please do subscribe and share the video if you like it. Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.